she said, I have to bring this saddle back and sell it. And I said, why? And she said, well, it made my horse lame. Probably the toughest thing about a business like a custom saddle business, so that having to do trade shows, when you're in retail, you have to do trade shows to get out there and sell this stuff, but you don't have to go home at night and make it. With a custom business, you're selling to the public all day, but then you have to go home at some point and fill their orders, and that can be tough. And one of the trade shows I did was the reining futurity. I did it for 18 years. And it's one of those things where you're standing there all day, and you're pretty worn out at the end of the day, and you talk to the same people every year, but over and over again. And they're great folks, but it does wear you out. And when other stuff happens, it can aggravate you a little bit more. And one year, I had a reining saddle I made for a lady, custom, and she rode it for 5 or 6 years, and then she quit reining and she brought it in to sell, which happens. So I had it in my booth. I had another lady and her husband that came in every year and visited, and they saw it, and she just loved it, and she went and sat in it, and oh, this is great. And they took it out in the barns and rode it on a horse, and she loved the saddle, so they bought it. So that was the end of it, I thought. Well, next year I'm in my booth and I'm sitting there, and they come bringing this saddle down to the booth, and she said, I have to bring this saddle back and sell it. And I said, why? And she said, well, it made my horse lame. And I said, it made your horse lame? And she said, yeah. And I said, well, that's kind of unusual for the saddle to do that. And she said, well, I was riding him and he started getting lame. And, he was just a little bit off in his circles and stuff, but then he was actually lame. And my chiropractor checked him out, and he said it was a saddle. So I said, well, okay. And I'm not big on chiropractors diagnosing saddle stuff, but the horse's body is connected, but the saddle gets blamed for a lot of things that people can't find when they're diagnosing things. Sometimes that's good for me, and sometimes that's bad for me. So the lady would come by every day with her husband, and they'd look in this, and if I had anybody looking at the saddle, sure enough, the reining community small, it'd be somebody she'd know, and she'd, oh yeah, I'm just selling it because it made my horse go lame, but it's a really nice saddle. So anyway, it went on like that till the end of the futurity, and I finally sold the saddle one time when she wasn't around. So and it was great for my publicity. Everybody knew that she was selling this saddle because her horse went lame because her chiropractor said so. So rock on down to the next year. And I'm all set up there, and I'm sitting there, and here comes this lady and her husband, and I'm thinking, oh no. And she comes up to me, she says, you know what? She said, it turned out my horse was coming down with ring bone, and that's why he was lame. It wasn't the saddle at all. So I'm thinking, well, I said, I'm really happy for you. I'm glad it wasn't the saddle, because I was feeling bad about that. And I knew the lady the saddle had gone to, they've been enjoying it, and they hadn't had any problems or any lame horses. But I guess the moral of the story is you really need to get a vet to look at your horse if you're having any problems, and really try to isolate a problem and not just blame it on something because there's nothing else to look at.
Hope you enjoyed today's episode of Horse Stories on Global Horse Network. We'd like to thank this month's sponsor, the Mustang Heritage Foundation. If you like what we're doing, be sure and click that like button. If you want to leave a comment, be sure and comment below, but be kind because my ego is fragile. You want to be sure to ring that bell if you want to be notified when we're posting new content. And as always, if you want to be part of the Global Horse Network team, be sure and subscribe above.